Good morning, afternoon, or evening. Wherever you're joining in from, hello. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on recruiting for uncommon fields. Thank you so much for making an effort to be here and committing part of your day to learning. I promise to make this next half hour very worth your time. Let's set up the context for today's session. I assume you're listening to a webinar named I Work in an Uncommon Field because you work in an uncommon field. So maybe you're recruiting for seasonal jobs, trades positions, positions that are hard to recruit for because they're super broad, or positions that are hard to recruit for because they apply to so few. Maybe your field faces some budgetary challenges, or maybe it's part of a niche that doesn't get widely addressed in recruiting content. No matter where you fall on the spectrum, I'm excited to have this opportunity to provide some tailored advice to those of you who fit in a less traditional mold. Now, recruiting for a role is basically marketing. So when I was thinking about how to structure today's presentation, I thought about the most basic marketing formula, which is good copy plus good placement equals good leads. So I've split today's presentation into two parts. We'll start with the part about good copy. This is your job description. So I want to share with you 6 tips pertaining to things like your layout or your language, and I found real-world examples of job descriptions to illustrate each point. And we'll continue with the part about good placement. So this is where you share your opportunities. And because this is a presentation about hiring Huskies, I want to share with you an overview of the UW recruiting landscape. I know you know all about Indeed and LinkedIn, but do you know about our RSO directory or our campus event calendar? This section will give you some ways to make campus resources do some of the heavy lifting for you. You're in a niche field, and getting qualified candidates to even lay eyes on your role is half the battle. My job today is to give you some ideas to broaden your reach, strengthen the perceived credibility of your role and organization, and above all, increase students' interest in your opportunity. By way of introduction, before I jump into content, hi, my name's Leah. If this is your first contact with the CNIC, we are so glad you're here. We're the centralized career center on campus, and we provide career guidance to students of almost all majors and school years. Everyone in our office works to connect students with a different resource or audience. We do everything from review students' resumes to connect them with mentors. And I work to get students in touch with employers like you. So my role is focused mostly around outreach and event coordination, really any opportunity where employers and students can connect. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you today. Now, I want to be upfront. I know it's a little weird to give advice on writing a job description when you can currently just feed some information into ChatGPT and have them write one for you. I'm not saying you shouldn't use AI as a starting point, but all the same, I'm going to present on some elements of a good or a successful job description to help you set expectations and draw a crowd. And whether you use these tips to infuse a human element into your JD or you use these pointers as a prompt for ChatGPT, that's entirely up to you. So starting with my first tip. My first tip is to use accurate job titles. Usually the more specific you can get, the better. So take the accounting example up here for one. Senior accountant speaks to hierarchy, payroll accountant speaks to program, and either of them give more information than just accountant, right? But be wary that being too specific or creative could look strange on a resume. The fastest example that came to mind for me to illustrate this point was the title sandwich artist, which you can earn when getting a job assembling sub sandwiches. I know the term sandwich artist is pretty well coined now, but imagine how it looked before it became a well-known position title. Team member would probably have looked much more professional on a resume. Now, these next 2 points, I want to put in an asterisk here. As I mentioned on my agenda slide, I wanted to share some specific examples of job description for niche roles that I've seen out in the wild, so to speak, so you can see what's actually being put out into the world on LinkedIn. My live webinar included links, which I'm aware that you can't click into when watching a recorded webinar. So I'm breaking the fourth wall here, and I just want to simply summarize what each LinkedIn post is trying to illustrate here on the slide. And you just need to keep in mind that what I'm paraphrasing here, is basically a real life job post or an excerpt from a real live job post that I found when creating this webinar in November 2024. The first one for girls rugby program coordinator. I found this one, and I think that the organization who put together the job description for this role did a great job of naming this position. So imagine they could have just named this position rugby coach or something like that. They would have then only pulled up for candidates searching for coaching positions or positions that speak to candidates' interest in rugby, right? But giving this position a program coordinator title allows it to aggregate into searches made by candidates looking for program management work. And you're going to appeal to those with a background in coordinating projects in the spirit of achieving business goals, right? And finally, you're going to give a gift to the lucky candidate who gets this job because they'll get to put program coordinator on their resume, which is going to lend itself to a much bigger, broader path for future work than coach will. In contrast, I found another job posting for educational internship, in parentheses, performance. It's worth noting, I found this role while searching in the niche for childcare. So LinkedIn pulled in this job posting because it had educational in the title. LinkedIn, and therefore I, at a first glance, thought this role was for somebody interested in teaching. But it's not until you read the job description that you learned that it's named an educational internship because the internship is meant to be educational. So it's actually for somebody interested in an internship in professional sports and athletic coaching. So really, it would have made a lot more sense to name this position performance science intern. Educational internship is kind of redundant, right? All internships are educational. And also, given that I found this role while searching for jobs in childcare, chances are likely pretty low that somebody in the performance science field is actually going to stumble across this with the way that it's currently named. Overall, what I'm trying to get at in this slide is twofold. Number one, you have a better chance of recruiting the right people when you have a correctly named role. And number two, you give whoever takes the job a total gift when you title roles in a way that's specific and competitive. This leads nicely into my next slide. I found another job posting for an event coordinator position, which I thought nicely illustrated both my last point. This job posting was for a job titled events convener instead of event coordinator, which may be more creative, but it's not entirely logical. And it also illustrates my next point, which is use you-centric language, which this job description did very nicely, I thought. And I've given you two choices here to illustrate this. Rhetorically, tell me which one sounds more personable. Quote, the convener position will support the day-to-day management and coordination of events and play a key support role in yada, yada, yada. Or, quote, as the events convener, you'll be supporting the day-to-day management and coordination of events. You'll play a key support role, yada, yada, yada. Replacing this person language with you language helps candidates visualize themselves in the role. And this will work in your favor as the recruiter, as someone recruiting for a niche role. So when you're writing your JD, take away the sterile blank canvas language and really try to capture what you'd be doing if you were working this role. It cuts to the heart of what the job demands, and that works in your favor as the hiring team. My third tip encourages you to think critically about necessary versus optional skills. How many years of experience, what type of degree, what qualifications are imperative for you to have? The more niche your role, the fewer eyes on your posting anyway, right? And then you add niche qualifications onto that, and your candidate pool is going to be slim. I thought that this posting for a senior flavor applications technologist, fun job, did a nice job of offering options, something I'm seeing more and more of nowadays. This role gives candidates two choices. They're qualified if they have a master's degree or higher in food science and 10 years of industry experience. And they're also qualified if they have a bachelor's degree in food science and 12 years of industry experience. Maybe your role necessitates some sort of certification, like a CPR training or real estate certification, etc. Do candidates need to have it before they apply, or would you be willing to allow them to pursue it upon hiring? Some organizations will even pay for candidates to complete certain trainings. Having a certification could be a barrier to entry for some candidates who meet every other qualification, so think critically about this one before listing. And last one, which I see complaints and memes about all over my LinkedIn feed, is a nudge to be conscientious about how many years of experience you're requiring for entry-level jobs. This entire slide really is just about hosting a bigger party by way of putting more folks on the guest list. It's more equitable for candidates and invokes higher application turnout for you. My fourth tip concentrates on using part of your JD. Concentrates on a part of your JD, usually devoted to listing the various responsibilities associated with the role. Right? So in this role, candidates will do X, Y, Z, etc. Sound familiar? Now, that section is often gruesomely long, sometimes 10 or more bullet points long, and obviously never fully exhaustive or totally indicative of what candidates are going to get up to in the role. So I'd encourage you to section out that terrible list of bullet points into digestible categories. You can then assign each category a percentage point to depict the amount of time that candidates should expect to spend on each category in a given work week. So take this posting for a program coordinator for the Multicultural Center. They list that 40% of their workload will focus on handling programming logistics, 30% will focus on promoting new initiatives, 15% will focus on content creation, etc., etc. And when you chunk up your JD this way, candidates are more easily able to visualize a day in the life. And this relates back to a point that I made a few slides ago. Capturing what you'd be doing if you were working this role cuts to the heart of what the job demands, and that works in your favor as the hiring team recruiting for a niche role. In today's day and age, candidates want hiring to be a two-way street. Of course, you care what candidates have to offer, but they care about what you have to offer too. And when you have your work cut out for you, as you do when you're hiring for a niche role and you're already working with a small candidate pool, every effort that you can take to advertise the benefits of working for your organization is going to help you. So emphasize the value that you're bringing to your future hire. What's your benefit structure? Do you have a remote work policy? Do you have any DEI initiatives in place? A mission statement about your contributions to the greater good? Do you have a dog-friendly workplace, paid volunteer days? And put some examples in here about ways that other companies have gotten creative about showcasing their value. I found this posting for a ticket services coordinator role that highlights that those who have held the role before have gone on to work for other prestigious sports organizations. So as to say that you could too if you took this role. Another posting for a retail seasonal sales associate lays them all out back to back. And as a seasonal retail position, likely hiring high schoolers or young college students, I thought the idea of daily pay was a pretty aggressive offering, likely to be desirable to that demographic. And the last example that I show here is for a classroom aide that offered a membership to care.com as a benefit. So similar to that last one, that's likely really beneficial to their target demographic, which I assume is people with caretaking experience. My final tip that applies to everyone is to take advantage of a technical offering on certain hiring platforms. Most notably, I've seen this on LinkedIn and Handshake. If you have the option to link yourself, a hiring manager, or a teammate to your job post, and you're hiring for a niche role, you should do this. You can see what this looks like on the screenshot, right? So you can see that you have an opportunity to contact the hiring manager, Jonathan V, or you can click on his profile picture to view his profile. This is incredibly helpful for both you and the candidate, especially when you're hiring for a niche role. You should always assume the candidate has questions about any job posting, and they'll have more if your role is incredibly specific. And if you're able to answer questions prior to receiving their applications, that's fewer folks you have to weed out or more folks that you've allowed to stand out. If the job platform you're using doesn't allow you to link somebody to the job posting, simply adding an email address to the job posting and an invitation to reach out with questions is also a good option. This slide is a bonus slide for any folks who are hiring for seasonal roles. So I understand it doesn't apply to everyone. So if it doesn't, feel free to tune me out for the next minute or two. Now, I get that trying to fill seasonal positions comes with an extra set of challenges. You're likely recruiting young folks who don't want to work these roles forever. They're necessary to meet the demands of the season, and therefore they must be reliable. And even if they don't plan to work the job for long, they need to be motivated and willing to work. And it's not an easy ask when you're communicating with high schoolers or college students. They are young and can have demanding schedules. They're often juggling several extracurriculars and homework. When I was creating this presentation, I knew I needed to devote a portion of it to addressing the plight of seasonal recruiting. So I put myself in the shoes of a student. What would keep me from taking on seasonal work? Well, I could imagine some students wouldn't feel like seasonal work aligned with their life path. Say they want to go to med school. How is working at the mall over Christmas going to help them get there? So you might combat this by creating a section in your job description to list out transferable skills. Working at the mall over Christmas teaches them customer service skills, teamwork, stress management, time management, a commitment to service, right? These are all things that would be valuable to a student pursuing medicine. And by the way, I get that writing an extra section on your job description can take a lot of time. I just want to admit I use ChatGPT to help me identify those values. It doesn't have to be hard or take you a whole day to do that. Other students might feel like they can't get to an off-campus job, and I get this one's harder to combat. If a student doesn't have a car or live off of a convenient bus route, then yeah, your job might not be the job for them. You stand a better chance of appealing to students who already use public transportation. So if you've never heard of UW's Commuter Commons, this is a space reserved on campus for students who bus or ride share to campus, and you can post flyers here for roles if that makes sense to you. Or consider providing the address in your JD so students can preview their commuting options before even applying. It's not always enough to say our office is in North Seattle or rely on whatever you program into the platform location. Even just a couple blocks difference could make the difference between having no bus transfers or one. And lastly, some students may be nervous about your ability to be flexible with them. I remember working a retail job as a sophomore in high school, and my manager would schedule me for the overnight shift redoing the floor set. I'll never forget approaching her to say, I'm in high school and I have to be at school at 7:20 in the morning, so working until 3 a.m. isn't really going to work for me. And it was shocking to me that that wasn't a given. If you're willing to work around student schedules and commitments, mention that in the job description, because I don't think many students assume you are. All right, we've completed the first half of today's presentation. We're going to segue into platforms. I want you to know how you can reach Huskies, and more specifically, how you can reach certain types of Huskies by leveraging different communities and platforms that are already in place here at UW. Let's dive in. I'm going to start strong with the number one resource I can give you. If you decide to exit the presentation after this slide and take zero of my other pieces of advice, I still think you would stand a great chance of getting a good exposure for your role. May I present to you the Registered Student Organization Directory. This link aggregates every student group in place here at UW. Let me show you how it works. Say that you're recruiting for your physical therapy role. You're hoping to recruit students who are pursuing physical therapy as a major. So you can search for physical therapy, and hey, look, you've got 7 or 8 relevant different student groups that fit your target demographic. So if you want to contact the Doctor of Physical Therapy Student Association, you can click into their profile and you could copy their email address. Now you're all set up to send them an email that says, "Hi, I'm with Leo's physical therapy clinic in the University District, and I've got a great job opportunity that'll be available next quarter." And depending on your interests, you could send them a flyer or a square image to post on their RSO's social media account, or you could ask them to set up an info session, or ask if they host events that you could sponsor or participate in. Here's another example. Say that you're hiring for jobs in childcare. So you could put childcare in the search box. Oh, no results. Don't give up. You see, if I type in child, then I get some results, right? Or if I type in kids and click all organizations, then I get another whole list, right? So play around with different keywords based on your target demographic and don't be afraid to use this platform. Similarly, don't be afraid to use departmental contacts to help you get in touch with their students. If you're hiring for, say, a wildlife care specialist, another niche role I see sometimes, that's a role that could be relevant to a lot of different major populations. I could imagine contacting biology or environmental and forest sciences departments, just to name a couple. So you can click this link, and you could find biology among this link. And then you could go to the About Us and the Contact Us page and look for a contact there, right? You can usually find a general departmental email address on the contact page. And then from there, it's a similar process to the one that I outlined for contacting RSOs, right? Hi, I'm hiring for this job, or I'd love to speak with students in your department. How do you recommend that I interact with them? Sometimes, though, if you're willing to explore a little bit, you might even be able to find a better contact. For example, imagine that you are trying to click on the art history, and design program. So try and think like a student. If you're a student in this department and you're trying to look for a job that's relevant to your major, what are some of the things that you could click on among the tabs on the website? Oftentimes, if the website or department has an advising tab, that's a really good one, right? Students want to talk to an advisor or a coach about any opportunity, right? So I click on this, and what do you know? There's an entire page devoted to jobs and opportunities. So you click this, and this looks like a job board. Now, if you scroll through this looking for contact information, sometimes you'll find one and sometimes you won't. A quick scroll through this specific page tells me there's no contact information on here. But if I go back and I look around a little bit, scrolling down gives me a link to an email address for both the undergraduate program and the graduate program. So I can ask both of those places to see if they'd be willing to add my open role to their job board. As a final note, going back to my slideshow here, there's a good chance that the email address that you reach out to won't always be the best one. So don't be afraid to lean into the UW funnel. We are all connected here. I like to think we all try to help. Don't let the fear of contacting the wrong person keep you from just sending an email. If we aren't the right place for you to contact, we'll try to put you in touch with someone better. Now, it wouldn't be a Career and Internship Center presentation without mentioning our beloved Handshake. If you're unfamiliar with Handshake, it's basically LinkedIn, but for colleges. It allows three populations, campus career centers, students, and employers to connect with each other, and it features a lot of ways for employers to share their open roles. You can post your job to Handshake's job board, participate in a career fair, request to host an info session or event on campus, create a virtual webinar, or send messages to students. I'm going to dive deeper into each of these options in the next few slides, but to wrap up this little overview slide, I want to call out that for all my passion and enthusiasm for Handshake, it does not prove to be the best platform to recruit for medical, rehabilitation therapy, or education majors. Students in these departments and schools are not usually present on Handshake and prefer to engage in events hosted by the offices that house their majors. So if you're targeting, again, medical, rehabilitation therapy, or education majors, keep these next few slides asterisked in your mind that they're probably not the best fit for you, and consider engaging with the other recommendations I've made up until this point. We'll start easy with Handshake's job board. If you're not posting your open roles on here, you should be, namely because it's just another place where you can. Imagine you're trying to catch a fish. You have a much better chance when you have more nets, right? Handshake should be a named platform in your recruiting strategy, just like Indeed and LinkedIn. It's worth noting that Handshake is also in many cases more widely appealing than any other recruiting platforms for students. It offers enhanced searchability that's specifically for students, which other platforms just don't have. Students can search for things like internships, co-op opportunities, jobs that offer student loan repayments or tuition reimbursement, jobs that are eligible for work study. Other platforms just don't have these filters that are relevant to our students. So my argument here is that students are using these platforms because they're more user-friendly. Students are using this platform, because it's more user-friendly for them. So if you're not on Handshake because you don't think that it's widely used, think again. Handshake also offers employers the opportunity to engage with school-hosted career fairs. If you have the availability and the budget to attend, take a peek into what's on the docket for the current quarter. New career fairs go live at the start of each quarter for employer registration. So chances are good there's something live right now as you're watching. Some fairs, like the ones hosted by our office, allow all majors to attend, which is great if your roles are open to a broad scope of students. Some fairs are open to only certain majors, which is great for those of you with more specific roles. And there's a possibility that the target student demographic that you're looking to reach already has a niche fair scheduled to serve them. And again, asterisk for those of you trying to reach medical, rehabilitation, and education students, these departments and schools don't engage with Handshake, so you won't find career fairs hosted by these schools and offices there. And this is a plug to find the departmental contact and reach out to them for recruiting events that they might host. If you don't want to engage in a school-sponsored opportunity, or if the cost of registration is out of budget for you, you can consider engaging with the event side of Handshake. You have the option to create in-person events. You could choose to host one on campus by selecting a career center to host you in their lobby space, or you could choose to host one elsewhere, like at your office or another local area. If you choose to come on campus, different spaces have different rules and best practices. So like, for example, if you chose to engage with our office, we only host info sessions Monday through Thursday from 3:30 to 5. Other career centers, like the one in the Foster School of Business, offer info session time slots throughout the day, as well as lunch and learn opportunities. When in doubt, just reach out. Again, take advantage of the UW funnel and lean on us to help you figure out what's best for you if you don't know. You also have the option, though, to create virtual events. Students appreciate these because they obviously don't have to commute anywhere. It's worth noting that the virtual event board is usually pretty saturated with the same few employers in the same few industries. So if you're not creating virtual info sessions and you want to give them a try, you have a real opportunity to stand out in this space, and you have nothing to lose because virtual events are free to host. No matter what type of event you choose to host, make sure that the title and description are thoughtful and creative. A virtual session named Info Session with Company doesn't tell students anything about what they're about to learn. And I see them named like this all the time. It pains me. You don't need to have the coolest name in the box by any means, but something that quickly indicates the focus of the session is absolutely necessary. And from there, you can beef up your event description with things like the names and the titles of who's going to present, or expectations that you might have for students, like if they need to dress up or bring a resume. You can indicate what students are best suited to attend, like their majors or their school years, and links to position descriptions that students could research before attending. To wrap up my final slide on Handshake, you can use the direct messages feature to reach out to students in your target demographic. So if you've got a niche role to promote, having this bit of personal outreach can make all the difference. Just make sure you're not copy pasting up a storm. Students get a lot of junk from recruiters in their DMs, if I'm candid, and you don't want your attempt to be in vain. So I would encourage you to actually take your time with this feature. Above all, just remember to lean into the events and recruiting opportunities that are offered around campus. Our center hosts so many every year. At the time I'm recording this, we have plans to host 8 large career fairs and 3 mini career fairs this academic year. And we offer opportunities all year round for you to come and meet students and host info sessions. Other centers host their own events and allow you to also pencil in info sessions alongside lunch and learns, coffee chats, site visits, and all sorts of other things. You can revisit this slide for the hyperlink to an overview of events that are taking place throughout the academic year. Or again, you could reach out to departmental contacts or RSOs that align well with your open roles to check out other tailored opportunities. Now, this whole presentation is meant to help you understand how you can better get your open roles and niche opportunities in front of Huskies. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that 14% of the Husky population is international. That's about 8,500 students, many of whom are looking for roles. So, as you hire for your niche roles and consider casting wider nets, remember that accurately representing your organization is part of the equation. The best way that I can ally with international students is to encourage you to know your policies regarding international hiring. So if you're planning to use Handshake, or if you're already on there, this is your reminder to know what you're filling out. Whenever you post a job or apply for a career fair, Handshake is going to ask you to indicate if you accept OPT and/or CPT, if you can sponsor a visa, or if work authorization is required to apply for your job. If you don't know the answer to those questions, you can select unknown, which opts you out. But I'm going to put a little warning here that that's pretty much the second worst thing that you can do for an international student, because odds are low that you're going to come back to it. You'll get your job posting live and you'll get to submit your application to the career fair without answering it, but will you come back once you've figured it out? The actual worst thing that you can do, though, is assume that you know the answer. Too often, we see employers indicating that they're willing to sponsor visas, for example, only for international students to approach their booth at career fairs and then be turned away. If you're an HR professional attending this webinar, this is my formal call to you to educate yourselves on the answers to this question relevant to your company, and make sure that you educate the employees at your organization as well. If you're unfamiliar with OPT and CPT, just a quick little summary. These are temporary work authorizations for international students to gain experience in their field of study. And the programs vary just a little bit in terms of academic requirements, ability to earn college credit, application fees, among other things. But the main thing to note here is that as an employer, there's really not a lot that you should actually need to do or remember, because students are required to know what they're eligible for and what they need to do. Employers really just need to sign off on paperwork. Like for CPT, you'd have to give the student a letter that confirms their internship. So it's basically a job offer, which I would assume that you'd give to anyone to whom you'd offer a job. And for OPT, you'd need to complete a form that states the role is relevant to the student's degree. And there's more to this conversation, but that covers a basic introduction. For more on CPT, OPT, work authorization, you should watch our webinar titled Unlocking Global Talent, and it will be live on our website after January 16th, 2025. My final call to action is that if your company is willing to sponsor visas, get involved on InterStride. This is another job board, but it's specifically for international students, and it's one final way to widen your net and get your roles in front of the broadest audience possible. We've covered a lot of ground today, from advice on titling a job, using strong job description language, and seasonal hiring, all the way to navigating the student directory, sending direct messages, and knowing your international hiring policies. I hope that you're able to take away at least one idea to focus or inspire you as you make headway towards hiring for your role, however common or uncommon it may be. Again, my name is Leah Bothwell, and you can reach me via leahkb@uw.edu or at the center's general mailbox, cicevents@uw.edu. Have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are, and thank you so much for tuning in to today's webinar. Happy recruiting, and take care.